All right, so we've started the recording. Welcome, everyone. So let's just start by paying homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, so today we will listen to or read about Lady Visakha, who was the chief female benefactor during the Buddha's time. So for those of you who are interested, there are many different articles written if you just go to Google and Google up Visakha. And also, don't be confused, there were many different characters by the name of Visakha during the time of the Buddha. So here we are referring to Visakha, whom in a lot of the sutras was known as Migara's mother, and we will learn about how she became known as Migara's mother, okay? And after we'll first run through the story, her background, and then we will read a very short Therigatha, verse from the Therigatha. So I could only find one with reference to her. But also in subsequent weeks after this, we will read some sutras where the Buddha delivered some sutras to Lady Visakha. So I found those in the Anguttara Nikaya, which I thought was quite interesting, quite useful to read, okay? So this particular article that we will read through today was written by Dr. Ashoka Bandarage. And she wrote it in reference to many things, and also it was posted in the Huffington Post as well. Okay, so this article was written back in 2017. And this is not the only article that was written about Lady Visakha. There are many others, but I just chose this one as a reference. So let's read through very quickly here. So I'll just quickly run through the introductory by Dr. Bandarage. So this year marks the centenary of Visakha Vidyalaya, the renowned Buddhist girls' school in Colombo, Sri Lanka, named after the chief female benefactor of the Buddha. The Buddha remarked, Visakha stands out foremost among my women lay supporters of the order. Of the order means of the Sangha. The generosity, that is the dana aspect, of royal and wealthy patrons, such as Visakha and Anathapindika, the Buddha's chief male lay disciple, contributed greatly to the preservation and spread of the Buddha's teachings over the centuries. In light of contemporary debates over such issues as the ethics of wealth and the roles of women, it is inspiring to reflect upon the life of Visakha, the great Dhamma practitioner who was the Buddha's chief benefactress. So she, we will read, she played a very important role, just like how Anathapindika played a very important role because of their generosity. The Buddha and the order of bhikkhus at the time, the Sangha had a very good place to reside, especially during the rainy seasons. And so, as most of you know, then even today, I was just talking to a colleague the other day who is based in Pune. Those of you who are in Pune right now would probably know better than me that it's rainy season now. And when it's rainy season, it's very inconvenient. You can imagine during the time of the Buddha, where the transportation mode is not as modern as today, it's very inconvenient to continue to keep traveling like how they did during those days in order to spread the Dharma. And so places like Jetavana Monastery, which was donated by Anathapindika, and the Palace of Megara's mother, which was donated by Visakha, played a crucial role in being a shelter and also a center for, the Buddha was still delivering sermons, was still teaching in those places during the rains retreat, so to speak, they call it, which is about more or less 3 months. Until today, in many Buddhist countries, the tradition of observing the rains retreat is still there. And at the ends of the rains retreat, it is the ending is marked with what they call Katina ceremony, where the lay people have the opportunity to offer requisites and other items to the Sangha. Okay, so that's a separate thing. Okay, so let's come back to the story of Visakha. So Visakha was born into a wealthy family in the Magadha kingdom, and grew up in Saketa, a lovely city built by her father near Savatthi, located in the Kosala kingdom. So unfortunately, I forgot to whip up a map of the then different kingdoms in the northern part of what's present-day India. But you can see that during those days, there were two main kingdoms that the Buddha traveled between to give the teachings. One was Magadha, where you will hear a lot of reference to a king by the name of Bimbisara. So if I'm not mistaken, the capital of Magadha was Rajagaha, or present-day Rajgir, which is still there. Nothing much there now, but the what's called Bamboo Grove or Veluvana, where also again a very significant place where the Buddha spent some time there and delivered some sermons there, is located in Rajgir. So King Bimbisara was the ruler of the Magadha kingdom. Now Visakha was born into not only a wealthy family, but so I was reading some of the other articles. She was born into a generation of financiers. So you can think of like her grandfather was like I don't know, not just a wealthy person, but was highly regarded by King Bimbisara. So you can think of, I could imagine he probably was like almost like a treasurer or something like that. So she was born into such a family. Okay. But then here it says she grew up in Saketa. So if some of you remember, some suttas we sometimes hear of Saketa, reference to Saketa. We don't hear so much. We hear more reference to Savatthi, Magadha kingdom, Kosala kingdom. But Saketa was fairly close to where Savatthi was. And Savatthi in the Kosala kingdom is where the Jetavana monastery was. So what happened was at some point, so King Bimbisara and King Pasenadi, whom we all hear very often as well. So King Pasenadi is the ruler kingdom of the Kosala kingdom. And so they both kind of knew each other as well. And what I read from some of the other articles was at some point, King Bimbisara felt that Visakha's grandfather, his skills, his qualities would be useful to help King Pasenadi in Kosala. And that's how he suggested for the family to move there, and that's how it came to be. And that's why here Visakha grew up in Saketa. And here it's a lovely city built by her father. So there's some references in other articles that could have been the case. Not 100% sure. Could have been. Okay, but what's trying to say here is that you have to imagine that her background, where the family that she was born into was not only a rich, wealthy family, but was a family that was highly regarded by the royals of two different countries. So a fairly, how should I say, not just well-to-do, but well-known as well, well-respected, let's say, okay? Okay, so in Savatthi, she married into a family of great wealth. And so there's another story to that as well. So I think, yeah, I'm not sure if this one mentioned it, but just very briefly about her marriage. So what happened was her father-in-law, Migara, had a son by the name of Punya Vardhana. So as was the custom of those days, so Migara wanted his son to marry well, but his son wasn't too keen about marriage. So what the son then said to the father was, okay, I will agree to marrying someone, but she must possess the 5 so-called maidenly attributes of beauty: exquisite hair, teeth, skin, youth, and form, must be of a marriageable age, must have certain qualities, blah, blah, blah. So he purposely gave those prerequisites, so to speak, to his father, Megara, kind of secretly hoping that no such woman exist at the time. And the story goes that so Megara, of course, sent his servants out to hunt for such a woman. And they went to different kingdoms. At first, they couldn't find anyone, but the story goes that one day they stumbled upon Visakha. So here, in addition to her riches, Visakha was renowned for her beauty, charm, poise, and physical strength. Here it didn't mention she was also renowned for her witty, what's the word? She was intelligent, okay? So she possessed the 5 maidenly attributes of beauty: exquisite hair, teeth, skin, youth, and form that her husband Punya Vardhana had required of his bride. After marriage, Visakha gave birth to 10 sons and 10 daughters, who in turn gave birth to a great many grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So you can imagine that she had not just many qualities, but she was very, very capable. Of course, I forgot to mention. So Megara was a wealthy person as well. So this was a marriage of 2 wealthy families, so to speak. Okay. But at the same time, she, had 10 sons and 10 daughters. So she had a very big family. So here it says Visakha was an exemplary wife and mother and a compassionate caretaker of animals. She was also a person of wisdom. Here we go. Kindness, generosity, and other attributes of inner beauty. Though she lived in a patriarchal society, as we all know at that time it was fairly patriarchal, Visakha maintained her own independent business and was known for her managerial and communication skills. So here it was quite interesting when I read about her in this article and a couple of other articles. It didn't occur to me that there was a possibility that some women during the time of the Buddha ran their own independent business. So I could only assume probably it was because, of course, Visakha's good qualities, but also probably her upbringing. So I can only imagine that, and I could be wrong. So those of you who are better at this than me, please let me know. Please, enlighten us. So a lot of times it was not like women were, what's the word? I would like to use the word subjugated, but that's probably not the right word to use. Anyway, there wasn't a lot of opportunities for women to run their own business, and Visakha was one of them. So she probably had support from her family to do that, but she also had the intelligence and the wisdom and great managerial skills. On top of being able to have so many children as well. Obviously, coming from wealthy families, they would have, a number of servants, etc. But surely she would have been very capable to be able to run such a large household and her own business as well. Okay, so she must have been quite a lady. Okay. Among all of Visakha's virtues, most noteworthy was her devotion and support for the Buddha and the Sangha. Okay. Now, so before she got married, actually, she had already met the Buddha. So Visakha first met the Buddha, listened to his teachings, and entered the path of the Dhamma when she was just 7 years old. So what happened was, when she was about 7 years old, the Buddha was visiting. I think that time it was before her family moved to Saketa. Her grandmother, so the Buddha was traveling and they were in, where Visakha's grandparents, lived. And her grandmother arranged to have, as customary, invite the Buddha and the monks and everyone to have like the dana, right? And other items, requisites, etc. So even till today, common practice, especially in Buddhist countries, grandmothers would bring their grandchildren along. That's why Sunday school is popular, not just parents bringing, but we see often that grandmothers will, bring their grandchildren there. So it's very common Buddhist practice that, when the parents are busy working or whatever, the grandparents, especially mostly the grandmother, will bring the grandchildren for Buddhist activities and all that stuff. So Visakha here was just 7 years old. And of course, usually if there is dana, then the Buddha will also have a sermon. So the story goes was that when she was 7 years old and when she listened to the sermon that the Buddha had delivered when her grandmother arranged for that event, that just by listening to that sermon, Visakha became a Sotapanna. Okay, so she understood to that aspect. All right, so that was the story of when she was 7 years old. And from then on until her death at the age of 120, so she lived till 120. She used her wealth and talents to tirelessly and generously serve the Sangha. Now, Visakha's father-in-law, Migara, was a devout disciple of the Nigantha. So a lot of times when we read the sutras, we hear a lot of references to the Nigantha. So the Niganthas is another different sect. Here it says a sect of naked ascetics, and they were again another sect that was existing at the time of the Buddha. Okay, so Visakha's father-in-law Migara was actually a disciple of the Niganthas. And the story of how she convinced him to accept the Buddha's teachings attests to her sense of humor, intelligence, and audacity. Okay, so here's the story. So one day, a Buddhist monk came to Migara's doorstep as he was eating out of a golden bowl. And Migara refused to offer the monk any food. So embarrassed, Visakha said to the monk, pass by. Pass by means don't stay on, Venerable Sir. My father-in-law eats stale food. Okay, so during the time of the Buddha, it's quite common. So the Buddhist monks go on alms, and what they normally do, for those of you who are not aware, they will make their presence known at the doorstep of a household. Okay, and if after some time nobody comes, the household, either no one is there or they're not interested, they do not offer any alms to the monk, then he will pass he will move on to the next household, and that's how they go on alms during those days. Okay, so Visakha said to the monk, she said, "Pass by, Venerable Sir, my father-in-law eats stale food." Now, of course, father-in-law would be very angry. He is like, "What do you mean I eat stale food? I eat very good food. I'm, a rich person." So the enraged Migara demanded an explanation. And in her calm voice, Visakha explained that Migara was eating the benefits of his past good deeds without doing anything to accrue further merit. Okay. Visakha also said that given her unshakable faith in the teachings of the Buddha, she did not feel comfortable living in a house where monks were not welcome. If she did not get permission to invite the monks to the house, she would leave. Now, this is a very bold, very bold statement, especially made by a married woman during that time. You can imagine how, how should we say, fairly confident she was, and strong, steadfast in her faith in the Dharma. Because, by 7 years old, she was a Sotapanna already. So obviously, if she was not, like she say, if she was living in a house where Buddhist monks weren't welcome, she won't feel comfortable. And she say, if I don't get to invite them in, then I'm just going to leave. Now, that is a very bold statement. Of course, she probably felt comfortable to say that because of the support of her own family. That probably gave her confidence as well. One can imagine, yeah. Anyway, the story goes is that reluctantly, Migara agreed to invite the Buddha and the monks to a meal at his house. So this is a very summarized version of the whole story, okay? So when he heard the Buddha's discourse at the end of the meal, Migara entered the Dhamma path. So he became confident in the teachings of the Buddha. He expressed gratitude to his daughter-in-law, which is Visakha, for helping give birth to his spiritual liberation. So what he basically said was that, from now on, I am kind of reborn by understanding the teaching of the Buddha, understanding the Dhamma. I feel like I'm reborn, and it is Visakha that gave birth to this rebirth in me. And so that's why he declared that henceforth Visakha would be like a mother to him. And so thus Visakha, who was actually his daughter-in-law, came to be known as Mother Visakha, or Migara Mata, the mother of Migara. And in time, she built the magnificent Pubbārama Eastern Monastery. So Pubbārama was actually located on the east side of Jetavana. That's why it was known as Eastern Monastery. And she donated it to the Sangha. And the monastery also came to be known as Migara Mattupassata, the terraced abode of Migara's mother, or the palace of Migara's mother. So here I'm just quickly running through whether okay, so here there is the story of how Pubbārama, so I won't jump to that. I'll let us come to that later. There is a story of how Pubarama came to be. But a lot of times in the suttas, funnily enough, sometimes it's referred to as Pubarama, but most times it's referred to as Migara Matupasada, or the palace of Migara's mother is translated that way. Okay, so now we understand a little bit more how it came, who was Migara's mother. Okay, so Visakha always tended vigilantly to the well-being of the Sangha, attending to the needs of both monks and nuns. She requested the Buddha to grant her 8 boons, or 8 wishes. So as long as she lived, and she lived to 120 years old, she wished to give robes to monks during the rainy season, those 3 months, rice gruel to the monks daily, meals to monks who entered Savatthi, that is the city in Kosala, meals to monks who left the city, meals to sick monks, medicine for sick monks, meals for monks tending the sick, and clothes for nuns to wear while bathing. These 8 boons. And the Buddha granted Visakha these 8 boons when she disclosed her pure intention. So what was her intention? Her request was not motivated by self-promotion. So it wasn't to gain fame or glory or whatever. Instead, she wished to develop the 5 spiritual faculties, Pancha Indriya: faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. So those of you remember, Venerable Sister Kema used to say, just remember FEMQUA. FEMQUA. FEMCW. Faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. These are the 5 faculties to help us on the spiritual path. And the 7 factors of enlightenment, Sattabhujanga, which is mindfulness, investigation of the Dhamma, energy, joy, tranquility, concentration or collectedness of the mind, balance, collectedness, and equanimity. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep, that's right. 7 factors of enlightenment. So basically, she went to the Buddha. She said, please grant me these 8 wishes. I wish to give these 8 things for as long as I live. And it's to help me develop the 5 spiritual faculties and the 7 factors of enlightenment. Okay. And the Buddha gave her that wish. So as a leading female disciple, I want to say lay disciple of the Buddha, Visakha played an influential role in activities pertaining to the Sangha. Very interesting here, because it's not often that lay people are given the opportunity to influence matters pertaining to the Sangha, especially with regards to monastic precepts, because monastic precepts are for the monastics in terms of their daily activities, how they live, basically the rules, etc. So here, Visakha is not a monastic. She's a lay person, yeah. But she had the opportunity, in some instances, to intervene. And it wasn't because she was being nosy or busybody or whatever. It was mainly because she saw some, how should I say, characters or behavior that were particularly disruptive, so to speak. And also because of her character, her qualities. So she was wise, she had good managerial skills, she knows how to, the way the story goes, how she used her wisdom and her calmness to manage her father-in-law and eventually convert him. So she had these skills, and so the Buddha kind of, in a sense, how should we say, had her help out a little bit, so to speak, because of these qualities that she had. Plus the fact that she apart from being able to run a very large, big household, she was also running her own business. So quite a person, yeah. So a number of monastic precepts were promulgated due to her intervention. For example, she questioned those monks who refused to ordain novices during the rainy season. She told the Buddha, the Dharma is timeless. There is no time when the Dharma cannot be followed. And thereafter, the Buddha allowed ordination during the rainy season. Visakha played also an important role in managing the Bhikkhuni Sangha. Sometimes the Buddha allowed her to settle disputes among the nuns. Some precepts for the nuns were set forth on her advice. So we also need to understand here that it's not because lay people can step in anytime to, settle disputes amongst the monks and nuns. That's not what this is trying to imply. What it's kind of saying is that Visakha, because of her qualities, we have to understand the background, the family that she was born into, the background in which she was raised, the qualities she had as a person, not just a woman, but as a person, the skills that she had in terms of, you can think of if she were running an independent business and a huge household with 20 children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, she probably had excellent managerial skills, one would think. So it's because of those qualities, that she played an influential role in the, what do you call that? The monastic precepts, okay? So not any lay people would be allowed to do that. I mean, we don't hear of stories of other lay people doing that during the Buddha's time. So she's a bit special in that sense, okay? Now, the story of how I hope I pronounced this correctly. If not, please let me know. The story of how Pubbārāma came to be built is fascinating. So one day, while Visakha was listening to a Dhamma discourse at Jetavana Monastery built by Anathapindika in Savatthi, she set aside a valuable jeweled cloak that was part of her bridal jewelry and forgot it there. And when she discovered the loss, she refused to take it back. Okay, she said, oh, I left it there at Jetavana, so I'm not going to take it back. Okay. Instead, she sought to auction it off to raise money to support the Sangha. So she said, okay, I left it in Jetavana, but I'm not going to take it back because since I left it there, it should be there. But I will auction it. So whoever can buy it, I will sell it to them. Now, this was a very, very expensive cloak. So the story goes, in another story, it had, was sewn with jewelry, fine jewelry, and I don't know what else, maybe sequins or what else. There's another article that actually had a full description of what it could have looked like. Possibly very heavy, but definitely super expensive. And what happened was when she could not find anyone in the whole of Savatthi with the means to buy her expensive cloak worth about some 90 million pieces of gold. So I don't know. That's probably very, 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 very expensive. So no one in the whole of Savatthi could buy that. Visakha bought it back herself. So she bought the cloak. So she kind of used her own money to buy it again. And then with that money and an additional amount of money, she bought land and built Pubbārāma at the eastern gate of Savatthi. Okay, so this was actually a cloak that her parents had given to her as a bridal gift, so to speak. So it was very expensive, if you remember. She came from a family where her grandfather was like a financier from the kingdom of Magadha, King Bimbisara's kingdom. Okay. I don't know if in present day, who can you think of? I don't know, top billionaire or something. Okay. Very wealthy, very a lot of support from the royalty, if you want to think of it that way. Okay, so no one in the whole of Savatthi could match that. So no one could buy her cloak. So she bought it back. And then she added a little bit of money and decided to build the palace of Megara's mother, or Pubarama, at the eastern side of Savatthi. So it's also on the east side of Jetavana Monastery. Now the building had 2 floors, okay, with 500 rooms on each floor. It must have been huge. And a pinnacle of solid gold at the top that could hold 60 water pots. It is said that the building was very tastefully furnished and completely carpeted. Pubarama was donated to the Sangha in the 31st year after the Buddha's awakening. So when the Buddha was actually in his later years already. Now, unfortunately, though, in present day, there are not a lot of what's left of Pubarama. Jetavana, you can still see some of it left, but Pubarama not so much. There is a Asoka pillar built to mark where Pubarama could have been. But that's about it, unfortunately. Okay, so on the day that Visakha dedicated Pubarama to the Sangha, she circumambulated, means circle, walk. Usually we circumambulate with the monastery or the temple or the stupa on the right side, on our right, so it's circumambulate. So she circumambulated the monastery with her children and grandchildren singing elatedly. She was very, very happy. Seeing this unusual behavior, some monks asked the Buddha whether Visakha had lost her mind. The Buddha responded that Visakha had not lost her mind. She was simply reciting some verses of exaltation over the fulfillment of her aspirations in past and present existences. The Buddha then spoke a verse extolling the merits of putting one's resources and abilities to good use. This well-known verse is known as Visakha Vatu. Just as from a collection of flowers, many garlands can be made by an expert florist, so also with wealth, faith, and generosity, one who is subject to birth and death can do much good. Okay. Now, Pubarama is mentioned frequently in the Buddhist text. The Buddha spent many rain seasons during the last years of his life and delivered many important discourses. In the Aganya Sutta, which was delivered to 2 Brahmins, the Buddha refuted caste ideology. He explained how humans became bound to the wheels of samsara, life after life, and how the practice of Dhamma, which is universal, allows anyone from the 4 castes to attain enlightenment. It was also at Pubarama that the Buddha gave permission for the Patimokkha, the basic code of conduct for the Sangha, the monastic rules, to be recited in his absence. Okay, so till today, the Patimokkha is still practiced, is still recited. I think every new moon, full moon, I'm not sure, please call me out because I'm not really an expert in the Vinaya rules. But it's still recited, Patimokkha. So Pubarama played an important role. One full moon night, while the Buddha was residing at at Pubarama, and the Kaumudi white lily was in bloom, the Buddha delivered the Anapanasati Sutta to a vast community of silent monks. So the Anapanasati Sutta is a mindfulness of breathing sutta. So we said that it was delivered at Pubbarama. In this discourse, which is central to the Buddha's teaching of meditation, he explained mindfulness of breathing in detail. Oh, bhikkhus, the full awareness of breathing, if developed and practiced continuously, will be rewarding and bring great advantages. It will lead to success in practicing the 4 establishments of mindfulness. If the method of the 4 establishments of mindfulness is developed and practiced continuously, it will lead to success in the practice of the 7 factors of awakening. The 7 factors of awakening, if developed and practiced continuously, will give rise to understanding and liberation of the mind. Over time, sorry, this was the next paragraph already. Okay, so basically the Anapanasati Sutta, of course, Bhante Vimalaramsi wrote a whole book about the sutta, so you're more than welcome to read that book. Describe also how the 4 foundations, here it's translated as 4 establishments, the same thing, 4 foundations of mindfulness. Mindfulness of body, mindfulness of feeling, mindfulness of the mind, and mind objects, or sometimes translated as Dhamma. So Kaya Nupassana, Vedana Nupassana, Chitta Nupassana, Dhamma Nupassana. 4 foundations of mindfulness. Now we're not going to go into that here. I'm also not an expert to expound on that, but there are many. So Bhante Vimalaramsi already wrote a book about that in detail, and you can also visit the YouTube channel to find discussions or explanations on that sutta. Okay, all right. So over time, due to a confluence of factors, okay, so I'll read this paragraph, but it's really a commentary from the author here, okay? So due to a confluence of factors, the Buddhist teachings and culture disappeared from India. Well, it's now back in India. These factors included internal dissension, loss of patronage from the royalty and wealthy donors such as Visakha and Anathapindika, the revival of Brahmanism and Muslim invasions. Like most other Buddhist monasteries and sacred sites, Pubbarama was destroyed. Thanks to the pillars built by Emperor Asoka in 3 BC, important Buddhist sites throughout the Indian subcontinent can still be identified. The ruins of Pubbarama and the stupa that houses Mother Visakha's ashes are yet to be excavated. Ironically, today, what now marks Pubbarama, the site where the Buddha spoke out against caste ideology and taught mindfulness of breathing, is a broken Asoka pillar in the shape of a Shiva lingam, worshipped by Hindu villagers. Appreciation and respect for Visakha's contribution to human spiritual advancement calls for excavation and restoration of Pubbarama by the Indian authorities with the support of the international Buddhist community. Okay, so the last 2 paragraphs are just additional comments from the author, if you like. So I'll just pause here just to invite if anyone has any thoughts or comments. Most happy to, I'm most welcome to share. Does anyone have any questions or comments or reflections about what we just read of Lady Visakha's story? It's a very quick summary though. I have to admit, very quick summary. There are plenty of articles you can find online, some of which, yeah, as with everything that we read, sometimes it's always good to read with a discerning mind. Yeah, just to understand what do we want to take out of it, okay? Does anyone else have any comments or questions they would like to ask? Okay. This was the only Therigatha. Yes, Jay, do you have a question? No? Okay. So this was the only Therigatha I could find that was by Lady Visakha. Very simple compared to a lot of the others that we've read. 4 lines. This one is a translation by Ayya Soma. But this translation is very basic, very simple. Do what the Buddha taught, and you will have no regrets. Quickly wash your feet and sit down to one side. That was it. So when I read this, I felt like it, and after reading the story of Visakha, I felt like it gave at least it gave me the perception that Visakha was a no-nonsense person. So she was probably good managerial skills, wise, witty, beautiful, no doubt, and had good qualities. But also when it came to the practice or the understanding and teaching of the Dhamma, I guess just by looking at these 4 lines, she's probably like a no-nonsense. This is what the Buddha taught, so don't waste time. Go clean yourself, sit down to one side, start listening or practicing, what I mean? Just a kind of a short depiction of possibly how she was like as a character, as a person, yeah? And eat your carrots. Yeah, she probably was like that, 10 daughters, 10 sons, a number of grandchildren, and a number of great-grandchildren. Plus an independent business, yes. And of course, she also had to obviously tend to her husband, support her father-in-law, etc. There's a lot of things to be done, right? So if she wasn't such a character, how would she be able to manage that? Plus, she asked the Buddha, grant me these 8 wishes. I want to do this, 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 this. Obviously, she had servants to help her do all the tasks, but she was like this, I don't know, CEO, if you want to call it, modern days, CEO, female CEO that was running all these things, overseeing all these things, yeah. And she lived to 120, so she must have been quite someone, yeah. And that's also probably the reason why the Buddha allowed her to be of some influence in the monastic sangha, especially the nuns. So one of the other articles was that there was some nuns that were, what can we say, playing a fool, dancing around, saying, things that weren't to be said and stuff like that. So she stepped in, and then she kind of talked to the Buddha and said, we should lay down certain rules for the nuns, like that, okay? So it was in no way to indicate that she was a nosy layperson who just, wanted to be in charge. It wasn't really like that, okay? So the plan is, this is the plan. So next week, we will have Rajiv Dinesh, to give a talk. So it's been a while since he joined our Sunday session, so it's very nice opportunity to have Rajiv Ji with us next Sunday. Then the following Sunday, we will read one of the suttas from the Anguttara Nikaya, where the Buddha spoke to Visakha about the importance of Uposatha. So Uposatha is the full moon and new moon as well, I think. Yeah. So the observance of the precepts, during new moon, full moon. We call it Uposatha days. Okay, so in Buddhist countries, it's still very much observed, like in Sri Lanka, Thailand. Yeah, so we will read from the Anguttara Nikaya, a discourse that the Buddha gave to Visakha about Uposatha. Okay, and upholding the precepts during Uposatha days. Then the week after that, I found another sutta in which the Buddha also gave to Visakha advice on 8 qualities. Well, I mean, it was delivered as like, these are the 8 qualities that would help a woman in their life, in the present life and in their future life. But I mean, depending on how you see it, whether you're male or female or non-binary, doesn't matter. I think we can still learn something from what are the 8 qualities, 4 qualities that can help us lead a good life in the present life, sorry, and 4 qualities for the future. Okay, so that's the plan for the next couple of Sundays. So that was the story of Lady Visakha. So I hope that was useful. I'm not sure. Was it useful? Was that useful to anyone? I hope it is. It was nice reading. Yeah, there just for everyone's benefit, there are a couple of others I can share here. Just a few links that I found. I'm pretty sure if you Google more or ask Copilot, ChatGPT or Claude, there will be probably plenty of others, but I'll just put in the link in the chat window here a few more that I found, if anyone is interested. So that's one from BuddhaNet. And then this one is from, I'm not sure who the author is, but I've seen this particular platform. Quite interesting, this one, the one that I just posted, because it gave the background, a little bit more background about Visakha's family. So it gave a little bit more background about her grandfather and grandmother. And also the story around how her grandmother brought her along to the event when she was 7 years old, where she first met the Buddha. Let me see if I have another link here. Yes, I almost forgot. So let me share my screen and stop. How do I stop? Okay, stop. So I just wanted to share a very interesting finding. So I was playing around with Sutta Central. So you can go to Sutta. Can you see my screen that I'm sharing? Yeah, okay. So you can go to Sutta Central and use the search engine within Sutta Central. Let's say if I type Visakha, enter. So you can see 109 results for Visakha. And there, again, not all are Visakha, the Lady Visakha we're talking about today, could be others. But here you can see there's another from Anathapindika who mentioned the Visakha we know. And I think this is the one where we will talk about in a couple of weeks. Uposatha, I think, I'm not sure. Now this is a different Visakha. This is Panchalisan. So the name Visakha, I guess, back in the day could be used for male or female. 849 is the one that we will come to in a couple of weeks. We will read that. Yeah. So you can see here just by typing the name Visakha, there's a lot of reference. Of course, some of it is not Visakha. Now, I'm going to type Migaramata. 25, less. Okay, but here is where it talks about when there was a sermon delivered at Migaramata, the palace of Migara's mother, or Pubbarama, as we now know. So you can see a lot of sutras, fairly number of them, were delivered at Migaramata Pasada. Not as many as those that were delivered in Jetavana, but a fair amount. Okay, so those of you who are interested, so this is a very common introductory statement. Okay, that's Pali, by the way. Okay, so you can see many. So it was a prominent monastery during the time of the Buddha. She played a very important role. Yeah. So I hope that was interesting and useful and inspiring, at least for those who dialed in today and those of you who will be listening online later. Any questions, comments? Is there anyone who has a particular disciple that they want to know more? So far we've covered the elder nuns. There's also a lot of material about the elder monks. Any requests? Or if anyone has any requests, feel free to drop me a note and I will see what I can dig up. Okay, so let's end here. Let me find the sharing of merit. Here we go. Right. We try to share. Oh no. Yes. Okay. Sharing of merit. All right. So let's share the merits together. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, thank you so much for dialing in. I hope that was useful. Take care, everyone. See you next week. Bye-bye.